Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Bearded Dev, and in this video we're going to be talking about how to unpivot data in Power Query. Now I've got on the screen in front of me a simple Excel sheet. It's pivoted data. We have a category in column A, and then across each of the other columns, B to F, we have years and numeric values representing target figures for those respective years. If you would like to follow along with this video, I have put this data in the description in a comma separated format. You could copy it into Notepad or Excel and then follow along with this video as well. If not, it's very simple to create your own data. You just need a category, years across the top, and a breakdown of numbers. We're going to go over to Power BI now, load in this data, and look at what transformations we need to make to it. I'm in Power BI desktop now, and I'm just going to click on Get Data, Excel Workbook. I'm going to select the target figures file and click on Open. And in a short period, that's going to open up the Navigator page where I can select the sheet, and we can see a preview of that data. So I'm just going to select sheet 1. We can see a preview of the data here, and we can see that we'll need to apply some transformations to this data before it's usable within our data model within Power BI. So to open up Power Query Editor, I'm going to click on Transform Data. So I'm in Power Query Editor now, and we can see we've got our data loaded, and the first thing I'm going to do is just check that the data types are making sense. So for column 1 we've got text data type, and then for all other columns we're looking at whole numbers, which is absolutely fine. And the first transformation we need to make is promote our first row to headers, and I've got a nice little icon under the transform section here. I'm just going to simply click on use first row as headers, and now it's a bit more meaningful to us. But this video is about looking at the unpivot options available within Power Query Editor. So I'm going to select the Transform tab, and under the Any Column section we have Unpivot Columns drop down, and there's 3 different options. We have Unpivot Columns, translate all but the currently unselected column, unpivot other columns, translate all but the currently selected column into attribute value pairs. So in other words, these are the columns I want to unpivot. This option, I want to unpivot all the other columns apart from the ones I've got selected. And then we also have this option of Unpivot Only Selected Columns, which is only going to translate the selected columns into attribute value pairs. So let's have a look at each of these options in detail. So first of all, let's start off with Unpivot Column. So I'm going to select all the year columns, 2017 all the way to 2021. I'm going to click on Unpivot Columns and select Unpivot Columns. And if we have a look at those results, I've still got the category, I've got the attribute, which is actually the year, the values from 2017 to 2021, and then I've got the numeric values in the value column representing amounts. So that's exactly as we wanted the results to look. And if we just take a look at the M code, or as I like to call it, look under the hood, we've got this operation here which is table.unpivot other columns. We can see that the category column has been preserved, and we've created the attribute and value columns. Now let's just delete that step. Let's go back to our data beforehand, and we'll try our option of unpivot other columns. And for this I'm going to select the category column, and I'm going to select the option of unpivot other columns. And in this scenario we've got exactly the same results. Again, we've got the category, we've got the attribute, which is really year, and we've got the value, which is really the amount. And again, if we take a look under the hood at the M code, it's actually an exact mirror of Unpivot Columns. So both operations actually perform exactly the same. So it comes down to what you're selecting on the screen. Are you selecting the columns to unpivot? In that case, you select Unpivot Columns. Are you selecting the columns that you don't want to be unpivoted? In that case, you select Unpivot Other Columns. And I guess it depends on how many columns are in each. If you have a table of 20 columns and you're only unpivoting 2, it makes sense to select those 2 columns and select Unpivot Columns. If you have it the other way around, then it would make sense to select Unpivot Other Columns. Okay, let's go back and just delete that step again. And let's have a look at the third option, which is Unpivot Only Selected Columns. And in this case, again, as you can see, I'm selecting only the columns with the year values 2017 to 2021. I haven't selected category, and I'm going to select Unpivot Only Selected Columns. And again, the results are exactly the same. So it looks like we're trying multiple things here and getting the same results. It looks as if within Power BI, or Power Query in this case, we've got multiple options and they all do exactly the same thing on the surface. But it's not quite the same. If we look at the M code for Unpivot Only Selected Columns, we can see it's a bit different. We've got an unpivot operation, but we can see it's actually created based on our original column headings of 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. So that's quite interesting. So to take this a step further, what we'll have a look at is what happens if we actually change that file. And just to set up this scenario, I'm just going to go back a step. So I'm going to start with Unpivot Other Columns. And for simplicity, we're just going to rename this query to Unpivot Columns. And then I'm going to duplicate this query. And I'm going to call this Unpivot Only Selected Columns, because I want to identify the differences between these two operations. Now what I'm going to have to do with this query is delete this step, because that's actually based on the Unpivot Columns, not Only Selected Columns. And I'm going to perform that operation again, Unpivot Only Selected Columns. So I'm going to leave that there, and what I'm going to do is open the Excel file and add another year. So if we think about it, this is something that could typically happen. We might get our target figures from the finance department signed off by the business, and each year they're going to add a new year pivoted within that Excel file. So let's open the file and have a look at that. Okay, so I've opened the Excel file here, and in column G I'm going to make up some figures for 2022. I'm just going to keep it quite simplistic and round numbers, and again you can do this as you follow along. Let's just save those changes, and once we've done that, we'll head back over to Power Query and have a look at what impact that has on by running those two queries again. Back in Power Query Editor now, and we need to be able to reload these queries. And to do that, we can simply refresh the preview. So on the Home tab under Query, I'm going to click on Refresh Preview and refresh all to refresh both queries. And if we have a look at those results, we can see now Appliances has got the value of 2022, sorry, the attribute, the year of 2022, and the value of 90,000, the amount. So that's exactly what we wanted the results to look like. But if we take a look at Unpivot Only Selected Columns, we've got a bit of a problem here now. So it's unpivoted what we had originally, the columns 2017 to 2021. But as we've added a new column, it's just created that separately. It's not part of the unpivot operation. Now, typically, I would believe that in this scenario, that would be the standard way that we'd add on a year each year. Typically, we'd load this data towards the end of the prior year for the oncoming year. But if there was a scenario where we wanted to only unpivot only selected columns, then this would be useful. But do let me know in the comments, can you think of a good scenario of when unpivoting only the selected columns, if effectively hard coding that we only want to unpivot these columns, would be applicable? I really hope you have enjoyed that video on looking at how to unpivot data in Power Query, and you've gained a good understanding of the different options available. This is my first video on Power BI, and I look forward to doing a lot more in the future. If there's anything in particular you would like to see, please do let me know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you are interested in data engineering, SQL programming, data analysis, business intelligence, then hit that subscribe button as well. And if you have enjoyed the video, always hit that like button. Thanks a lot for watching.